Unit 9 is going to cover sales tax and tipping and how to figure all of that out. So the sales tax is the amount of money added to the cost of an item based on the state's sales tax percentage, and that can change by state and even by area sometimes within states. Your subtotal is the amount of money owed for an item before you have any tax or if tip is applicable to that. Your tip is what you add to the purchase of a meal. Usually people say 20%, and the gratuity is just another word for tip. It's just the amount of money added to the purchase of a meal. And sometimes gratuity, especially if you're eating out with a large group, it's already inside of the receipt, so you can watch for that also as you're going out to eat. Some states don't actually tax groceries. Others do tax groceries. Some states tax clothes. Other states only tax clothes that cost more than a certain amount. Sales tax is really set by each individual state. How that even works. This is a table to figure out how to calculate the total cost. So if I'm shopping and I have a budget, I have to make sure that I am incorporating tax in as I am shopping, because you're going to have to add that on to your purchases. So this chart you're going to work through. Let's talk about this first one. Let's say you're buying a TV. Here is the item, and it's a 5.25% sales tax. So first of all, what you have to remember is when you are converting a percent, you have to move your decimal 2 places. So this as a percent becomes 0.052, because we have to move our decimal. Here it is, 2 places, and I have to add those placeholders in. So if you're not going to use your percent key on your calculator, make sure you move your decimal. I find that it's easier just to convert it to a decimal by moving it 2 places than to even find my percent key, because it's not really easily accessible on my calculator. So if I multiply the cost by the sales tax percent, this is the tax amount that I'm going to pay. And then to find your total cost, you simply add the two together. So step 1, move your decimal 2 places. Step 2, you're going to multiply. And then step 3, add them together. Now, because we're dealing with money, we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. Money only has 2 decimal places, so just round to the nearest hundredth, because you can't have, when I'm dealing with money, I can't have like 0.756. That would just become 76 cents. So round to the nearest hundredth because it's money. Then work through your exercise and brainstorm. One way to make this a little easier as you're out and about shopping and trying to process through as you're actively shopping is to round. So I could take my whole number. So for this refrigerator, $115.99. If I'm going to round it to the nearest 10, for me it's easier to work with tens. It's closer to 120 than 110. And then I can work with 120. That's going to be easier to work with than 115.99. And if sales tax is 5, we're going to take the 5%, which is a little bit rounded because it was 5.25, I think, which is closer to 5 than 6. Round that, multiply them together, and this is your rounded estimate. And the only reason you would use this, again, is just for a quickness there. And give you a little bit quicker, easier math to do as you're shopping. The truth is most of us have a calculator on our phone and can just whip it out and do quick math. So work through this. You can use the rounding method to make it a little easier to process through and then answer those questions that follow. Now this curriculum has a thing here for you to figure out how to tip. The truth is most receipts now already have it on the bottom what the percentages are. I normally just double my tax. So if my tax is $5.63, I would round that to $6 and then tip a $12. That's how I do it. I just round the tax and then double it. But let's go ahead and work through the math of this. So if my meal costs $67.23, one way that some people find easier is to find out 10% because it's a little bit easier to work with and then double that, or just multiply by 20%. So either way, they're going to suggest you tip 20%. So this chart wants you to find 10%, and then it wants you to double that to find your 20% tip. And then add it with your total. And the truth is, this way is not quicker for me, but in order to practice your percents, go ahead and do it this way. So step 1 is to multiply by 10%. Step 2 is to multiply by 2 to get to your 20%. And then step 3 is to add it to your total. Again, this is not how I would do it at all. I just double my tax. In my brain, it's the easiest way to do it. I look at what the tax was, round it, and then double it. That's how I do it. But let's go ahead and work through this chart just to practice your decimals. Then another quick exercise and another brainstorm. Another chart, practicing this. So the way this chart is going to have you do it is round it to the nearest dollar. So instead of saying $67.23, just $67. So round first to the nearest dollar, multiply by 10%, multiply by 2. Remember, 10% is 0.10. And then your fourth, oh gracious, let me fix that. Your fourth step would then be to add it together. So just another way to practice getting your tip value. And another exercise, another brainstorm. We're almost done. And last chart. So this is another thing that you rarely will have to do anymore because your server or the little machine that is at your table will sort of figure this out for you. But this is having us work through a restaurant bill being split between 4 friends. So that what they're going to want you to do is, for your first step, round to the nearest dollar to make it easier. Figure out 20%. They are multiplying it by 10% and then multiplying it by 2. I would just multiply it by 0.20, but that's how I would do it. Step 3, add it together to get your total amount that's owed. And then your fourth step is to divide by 4, so each person would pay individually. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know that I've ever done that. Normally, when we go out to eat, if I'm with friends, we just split the bill by what we have purchased. But this is something that can be done. Work through this chart, and then work through your last exercise and brainstorm.